To me, what's most powerful from their movement of these platform workers are the fact that they are changing what the unions look like in today's digital world. They are using technology not only to do their jobs, but to connect with each other, organize, and take actions.
Hello and welcome back to Collective Voices, a podcast from the International Trade Union Confederation. I am Stefania Cîrlea, and in this first series, Back to Basics, we are taking you on a journey through the core values of trade unionism so that you get to know the fundamental workers' rights that protect you. If you missed our first episode, we explored there one of the biggest questions in the world of work: why joining a union? We broke down the power of collective action. Our expert explained to us how and why it matters to be part of a union. And we looked at real examples of how workers have transformed their conditions by standing together. It is a great starting point, so make sure to check it out. Today, we are going to dive deeper into one of the most essential yet often contested rights in the workplace: the freedom of association and the right to organize. And to help us explore this topic, I am joined by my colleague, Ira Rachmawati, from our Human and Trade Unions Rights Department. Ira, welcome to Collective Voices.
Hi, Steph. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you for being here. And before we dive in, can you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us about your background and your work here at the ITUC.
Yes, of course. I'm originally from Indonesia, and that's where I started my journey in the union movement, working with the local union there, focusing on labor rights, advocacy work, as well as organizing workers. Now, here at the ITUC, part of the Human and Trade Union Rights team, I help coordinate the global campaigns of the ITUC to end forced labor and child labor, as well as the work around promoting fair recruitment and stronger protections for workers, especially those in vulnerable situations like migrant workers.
That's great. In our first episode, we explored how unions give workers the power to act collectively and demand change. But that kind of action doesn't just happen. I think it depends on having certain rights in place. And what I learned in the first episode is that at the heart of trade unionism, there is this idea that workers should be able to come together and speak with one voice. And this is what I understand by the freedom of association and the right to organize. But as the expert here, can you explain to us what these rights really involve?
Sure. These rights, like you said, are indeed the two most basic rights for workers that are protected by international law. Conventions number 87 and 98, developed by the International Labour Organizations, or the ILO. And these international law basically give workers legal rights to join unions or form their own union and get together, like you mentioned, to bargain collectively and advocate for better working conditions. But what is unique here about the international labor organizations who develop this international law is that the ILO brings together governments, employers, and workers from around the world to agree on these international labor standards, like these conventions. So these are not just nice ideas, yeah? The countries really have to implement it, uphold these rights that they have committed.
Yeah, it's important to hear how these rights, they are not just some abstract concepts that we talk about, but part of international law that governments can commit to uphold. But I think that having rights on paper and actually having them accessible in real life doesn't always translate in being the same thing. And I imagine that for a lot of workers, especially those that I can think of being in precarious jobs, the experience of joining a union or speaking up collectively can look very different. So how do workers experience these rights on the ground in reality?
In theory, the right to join union and to organize should apply to all workers. But in reality, as you may guess, many people and workers still face serious challenges to exercise, to use these rights, especially those working in informal jobs. Think about domestic workers, agriculture or farm workers, or migrant workers. They are often excluded from these legal protections. And then there are also platform workers, like delivery riders or drivers who work through applications. These workers are often classified as independent contractors, not as workers. So this label means they are usually excluded from this most basic right to join union or negotiating better pay. So like you mentioned earlier, indeed, while these rights look great on paper, there's still a big gap between what is promised and what many workers actually experience every day.
Yeah, and you just mentioned that workers like delivery riders or domestic workers are often left out of protection because of how this work is classified. But I think for a lot of our listeners, these terms can be a bit unclear. So can you explain to us exactly what informal work is and how do contractors differentiate from normal employees?
Yeah, informal work is any kind of work that is not fully covered by labor laws. And that could mean that it doesn't offer benefits like paid sick leave or vacation, and it does not include protections like notice before being fired or severance pay. And informal workers often do not have a contract, and they usually do not have protection like workers in formal employment. While contractors is like freelancers, and they are usually seen as being on their own, even when they actually depend on income from working to just one single company. So there is this legal gray area that often means that these workers are left without basic protections or support when something goes wrong, like losing work suddenly or getting injured on the job.
Yeah, that is tough. And yeah, thank you for the clarification, because now I can understand how much workers can lose out just because of these legal definitions at the end. I would like to bring this topic that we're talking about into the real world context so our listeners can understand a bit deeper these issues here and these rights. And you are mentioning that you're from Indonesia, and we were also talking about platform work, which I know that has grown rapidly in that part of the world in the last years, thanks to the technological advance. So how do these looks on the ground there? How do this issue play out in Indonesia?
In Indonesia, a clear example of this will be the motorcycle taxi drivers who work through applications. And obviously, these drivers have become a very essential part of daily life of people in the cities. And even though they work long hours and depend on these platforms for their income, they are not officially recognized as workers, which again, as I said, it means they don't get benefits like health insurance, social security, or the right to join unions. And in addition, they also have to deal with unstable pay, as well as pressure from the application's algorithm that control how and when they get jobs. And some drivers have even reported making less than 100,000 rupiah, and that equals around $7 for an entire 17-hour work a day. I mean, as you said, the kind of app-based work is really growing fast, but unfortunately, the law and protections for these workers have not kept up, and workers are suffering because of that.
Yeah, it is striking to hear how long and hard people are working with so little security and support, and all while being treated as if they're not even real workers. And as you said, this work is growing rapidly there and around the whole planet. And it's the people doing the job that are carrying all of the risks. But given all of these obstacles, are platform workers in Indonesia able to push back? Are they organizing to fight for these rights?
Yeah, indeed. It's really inspiring. I mean, despite all these challenges, how these workers are still finding ways to come together and organize. And by the way, in Indonesia, union memberships has always been pretty low. So for these platform workers, imagine the obstacles for them are even greater. But they don't stop, even though they also face a pushback from the applications themselves, and also the unclear law. And on top of that, the public awareness is also still lacking. Many people still do not fully understand that they should be seen as real workers. And I've seen that more and more of these workers are joining unions these days. Some others starting their own local groups or small unions. They really try everything to get together. And even by staying in touch through WhatsApp and social media, they even managed to organize a protest and strikes in a very short time using the technology solution, using these messengers and social media. It is truly inspiring for me, the fact that they're not just asking for better pay. They're also demanding to be seen and treated as real workers that are entitled to rights. And if I can add one more inspiring thing about their movement is the fact that they are able to even connect with platform workers in other Southeast Asian countries. This platform economy is really growing everywhere, like you said, worldwide. So this connecting them with other countries' workers, where they can share ideas, learn from each other, and work together to push for fairer rules in the growing app-based economy.
That is really powerful, and it's showing that the workers are really not giving up. And at the same time, it also feels that they are not just fighting for better conditions, but reshaping what organizing looks like nowadays. And as a last key takeaway of all of this, what would you say that it's the outcome of all of this work? And it's you were talking about inspiring things, but what do you find so powerful in all of these movements and all of this creativity that they are using in order to organize?
To me, what's most powerful from their movement of these platform workers are the fact that they are changing what the unions look like in today's digital world. They are using technology not only to do their jobs, but to connect with each other, organize and take actions. And they're doing it together, like you said, across countries. And indeed, I agree with you that their fight is really also a part of a bigger movement for workers' rights and social justice. And most importantly, that it is led by the workers themselves.
Yeah, I agree. Those wins that you mentioned are powerful, not just for the workers directly involved, but for all workers around the world. And they show what's possible when people come together and they share strategies and they build real international solidarity. And that is also exactly the spirit behind the ITUC's global campaign that we launched this year, where our goal has been to ensure fair pay and decent working conditions, and above all, proper recognition for these platform workers. And for our listeners, I'm going to include a link in the description of the episode so you can find out a bit more about this campaign that we launched here. Ira, Thank you so much for being here today. The stories and the strategies you shared with us really show how workers, even in the most challenging environments, are finding ways to stand together and claim their rights.
And thanks again for having me today. It's been a real honor for me to share the stories of these workers.
And for those of you listening, we hope that today's conversation sheds some light on how important these rights are, not only for platform workers, but for anyone who needs a fair voice at work. In our next episode of Collective Voices, Back to Basics, we'll dive into another pillar of trade unionism, collective bargaining. We'll try to understand a bit better the term, and we'll explore how negotiations between workers and employers have led to safer conditions and better wages and stronger protections, and why it is still one of the most powerful tools that workers have nowadays. If you found this conversation helpful, please subscribe, share this episode, and stay connected for more insights on how we can shape a just and equitable future through collective action. See you next time.